we focused on small multifamily 2 to 4 unit to basically just carve out that niche and help people like me identify this opportunity, make sure people knew about it, because a lot of people seem to believe the myth that you need 20-25% down, which is standard when you're not going to live in it. But if you live in the duplex and you do the house hacking thing, you got a 3.5% FHA, which is your minimum down, and then your 5% conventional. So, and those are insane ways to kind of speed things up.
Welcome, everyone, to the Creative Cash Flow Show. I'm your host, Jesse Mills, where we go through and show you real estate secrets for achieving time and money freedom. And on this week's show, I've got Mr. Ryan Luthi from Blue Door Real Estate, also with EXP. And I'll tell you what, guys, if you don't know anyone who has nearly 100 doors under their belt, who's not even 40 years old yet, which is pretty killer, and you've ever thought to yourself, gosh, how does somebody have 20, 40, 50, 100 doors under their belt? How the heck did they start? Like, did they come from money, right? Do they know all these secrets? Do they have all these banking relationships? Well, if you've thought this to yourself in the past and you don't quite know, what that story looks like, I have a real live rock star person on my show today, a good friend of mine and colleague. And Ryan, dude, talk to us about how you got in the game, man, and where you're at, how you got into it. And I just want to hear all the details because you got a really cool story.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the show, Jesse. This is fun to share. And I think that getting into real estate, or, if you're just getting started, or even if you've got a couple doors, couple buildings or whatever under your belt, you're kind of like, what's next? And how do I scale this? It's a fun conversation. And I grew up around real estate. My dad was super into it. He had built houses. I helped him build houses and things like that. So I kind of got into the hard work part. Yeah. So yeah. He did it on the side. He was kind of crazy. It was like his hobby was building houses on top of his regular job.
His side hustle was a builder.
Yeah.
Some people do Uber, DoorDash. He builds houses.
Yeah. Okay. Some people spend money on weird hobbies, and he was like off building houses and making money. But anyways,
that's awesome.
So so he did some flips. He did rentals and all sorts of different stuff, and I was exposed to that, and I could see that the path of wealth there, and how it created that hockey stick over the years for my parents and my family, and that for them. And I was like, this is neat, and they, in 1984, they had bought, they lived upstairs of a duplex, and then they were renting, and then they bought it from the owners. And so then they were, doing the house hack well before it was called house hacking. But anyway, so, kind of that's just cool. Planted that seed. And so then in 2013, graduated college in 2008, bounced around in various jobs. It was an interesting time to graduate into a pretty tough economy. But by 2013, finally had saved up a little bit of money and was tired of renting. I did the math, and we were spending, maybe $1,100 a month on rent. So over the 5 years after college, I'd 60, 70, 80 grand just kind of, thrown away, and was kind of tired of that. So started to research options and kind of look at that same duplex path that my parents had done, and found the FHA loan, kind of did some research, figured that out, and then bought a duplex. It was about 206,000 or something like that. So the FHA is 3.5%. So, whatever, $8,500 or whatever it was, we could scrape together. And that was definitely, at the time, it felt like a lot of money. And I think for a lot of us, the first one's the toughest.
But you always think it's huge at that time. And you always think it's so much money, and you're like, how the hell am I going to put this together? So, and again, in retrospect, you're like, oh, that's my little baby deal that got me rolling.
Yeah.
But it never feels like that, does it? Definitely didn't feel that way for me either.
And I think, home ownership was new. We were jumping into multifamily right away versus single family, right? So just, slightly bigger learning curve there, how to manage tenants and things and stuff that I'd never personally done before. So So that was interesting. Also inheriting a tenant. So we moved into the upstairs unit of the duplex. Downstairs was a tenant. He was a character and um, occasionally answered the door in his underwear, and just a very interesting guy. So
Fantastic.
that was an experience in itself. My life was probably less. Well, I don't know that I was excited about that either, but it was pretty funny.
Less excited than you are, but you're excited.
Well, yeah.
Well, it's
Anyways,
funny,
it
right?
was
What
cool.
it's funny with inheriting tenants. I was going to ask you because usually, it goes well or it doesn't. I don't find it's oftentimes in the middle. Sometimes it is, but it's usually like,
Yeah.
oh crap, I inherited these people and I wouldn't have chosen them, but apparently, the prior owner did and thought that was a good decision, or maybe just didn't know, right? Or you get super lucky, like, oh my Lord, I got so blessed, right? So you have underwear guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So fast forward a little bit. I kind of was like, it went very well, even with Underwear Man. And had a good experience. And we were basically even living in the bigger unit. We had a garage, we had central air, we had some upgrades to our life, which was kind of cool. Backyard that wasn't necessarily all ours, but pretty much. And then was like, you know what, man, I feel like there's a need for this in the market. So I was kind of started to have conversations with an old friend who was in real estate, and actually worked with him to help him start a brokerage, which was really fun. And we focused on multifamily. So we focused on small multifamily, 2 to 4 unit, to basically just carve out that niche and help people like me identify this opportunity, make sure people knew about it, because a lot of people seem to believe the myth that you need 20-25% down, which is standard when you're not going to live in it. But if you live in the duplex and you do the house hacking thing, you got a 3.5% FHA, which is your minimum down, and then your 5% conventional. So, and those are insane ways to kind of speed things up. So that was the ultimate goal, was to reduce my monthly payment, outgoing, which it did. So we were netting about, our net payment with the rent coming in, against the mortgage, was about $500. So we
Wow, not
bought
bad.
something. Yeah. So we bought something and we were spending less than half, right? And you're building equity, it's appreciating, right? All these things. So
Absolutely. All the other intrinsic stuff that people don't even really think about sometimes because they just
yeah.
see cash flow and that's it, or lack
Yep.
of cash flow, but there's still those other attributes, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so then basically started to got my license, started to kind of go down that path, and wanted
No,
to
what
keep
what year did you
investing
get
in.
your license?
15, right,
15.
beginning of
Okay,
2015. So a couple years later,
gotcha.
we
And
had
you're working
started
at your
started
job
things
full
in.
time.
Yep.
Yep.
Started things in motion to kind of get things going, but did that. And yeah, so did that part-time for a while I was still at my regular sales job that I had been doing for years. That was going pretty well, but I kind of was just looking for something new, and looking to build something. And I really just was passionate. I kind of just was like, I envisioned real estate as being my sort of my hobby, my one of my, this kind of side hustle, passion project thing, whatever. And then I just was like, you know what, maybe I can make this, my life, my gig, and it's been a wild ride since then. So shortly after we got the duplex, we got pregnant, and then we had our little one running around, and well,
Nice,
on the wood
nice.
floors, pitter pattering around, like,
Oh
and
yeah.
and probably starting to make us think, maybe we maybe we need a single family. So ended up getting a single family, not too far away in South Minneapolis, and then from there, jumped into real estate full time. So kind of had to wait a couple years, because you need 2 years of business tax returns in order to get qualified again. So that was a little bit of a break, in terms of investing. But then we picked up one more, and I think it was 2017 or 18. And since then, I've been basically buying something every year, pretty much, to try and keep the passive income machine rolling. So.
I was going to say, so did you have like a goal of this many doors per year or this much cash flow per year, or kind of when an opportunity came about, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I think, doors can be deceiving. I think it's helpful to kind of have some target.
Hmm.
But initially my focus was cash flow,
Hmm.
100%. And really bringing my wife home. She was at a bank. She was fine with it, but definitely wasn't like dream job, things like that.
Hmm.
And so just giving her flexibility to work on some of the other businesses that she had been working on instead of, going to the bank every day. And
Hmm.
so that was part of it. So kind of had a goal of, making enough to, offset the income that she had been bringing in. And then beyond that, it was really to eventually pay for, kind of our forever home was really the goal, to kind of just smooth out, keep my lifestyle where I wanted it to be, but not have the stress of, some of these payments that, I'd much rather have my tenants pay for my new home. So,
Heck yeah.
so that was a cool moment. So kind of fast forwarded to a year ago, was able to build a home, and almost the entire payment for that is paid for by the passive income from rental real estate. And
Wow.
so it's pretty neat. So
Dude, that is killer. And,
pretty
and I
cool.
know, and I know that this is a nice, beautiful home in an awesome area that, I mean, just it should be proud of the house in itself. But then on top of that, you throw in the fact that, oh, by the way, your tenants are paying for it, is killer, right?
Yeah.
So that is so cool, man. That is so cool, and that you had that vision and you're there, because so many people have a vision and like, oh, wouldn't it be nice, right? Or this would be pretty cool if, but then it doesn't necessarily translate into this is what needs to get done. And I had a conversation with a coach of mine yesterday, very, very experienced investor. I mean, apartment buildings, huge complexes, right? Marinas, all sorts of stuff. And he said, you got to be able to see yourself in the moment, right? And I bet you probably had done that. I'd be shocked if you didn't, right? You probably saw yourself in the house you're in now. What did it look like? What did it feel like to come down and have coffee in the morning with your wife and read the paper and have the kids there and know that it was taken care of? Like, you have to envision it. And it sounds, all kind of woo woo ish and magical crap, but it's so true. The mind, can do some crazy things. So I don't, how do you
Yeah.
feel about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think looking back, it's, reading a lot of books, whether Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all these kinds of books that start to create a mentality and a mindset of, delayed gratification. And I think that's really a huge part of it, right? So I'm not going to lie that it took some selling on my half to convince my wife to move into a duplex, to buy that, to start with that, right? To
Yeah.
kind of, wait, you want to move out of a duplex that we're renting and then move in with more tenants and still have this like neighbor thing, and like I said, guys would answering the door in their underwear, which I didn't know what's going to happen. Uh,
Yeah.
so that definitely added some funny moments. But
Right.
yeah, the cool thing is, you start in, so it's 2013, and then you fast forward 8 years later, and that was that point at which we were able to build the home, and and feel good about it. We had also, one of the things that I realized was I was super focused on cash flow alone.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important, obviously, to run your numbers and look at the cash flow, because cash flow is king. I really, I think that phrase versus cash is king is kind of a common phrase of the past. Um,
Hmm.
but having that recurring income coming in, it creates so many opportunities, because it either offsets your income, your expenses in daily life, or it goes into an account and it kind of creates future down payment money to buy more, right? And sort of
Hmm.
have your properties buy your properties. And so for many years, it was like, try to be reasonably frugal and stash cash from, rental income or whatever it was,
Hmm.
and use that to buy more, and to kind of keep doubling down, if you will. That was just an exciting thing, because you read about in the books, and like you said, you do a dream board, or you write down your goals, and and some of those are personal and some of those are, business and whatever.
Hmm.
But it's so cool to, it's hard to think of where your life's going to be 8 9 years from now, right? Like that's kind of hard to even grasp. We write stuff down if you're
Yeah.
a goal person, but like you said, it is like, I mean, I honestly drive home, a lot of days, and I kind of got to pinch myself, like this, it's crazy, it happened, we did it, so
That's so cool, man.
pretty exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. That is freaking awesome. Well, and so you said a couple of things I want to touch on, and I want to get into a little bit more too of some of the details of like each place and the financing and the down and especially like what you knew then versus what you know now, right? Because of course you always are changing and learning and growing. And now that you're full time in real estate, and I know you have a very, good business, and a really good reputation in the industry in the area for helping other people, get in the business and helping other people invest, and especially with multi units and getting into apartments and like knowing that kind of stuff, right? So now that's kind of like, hey, here's just what I've done, and let me show you how I can help you, based on my experience, which is really cool, right? So I want to get into that a little bit too, but let me unpack a couple of things you said. One thing you had mentioned is, delayed gratification. And I think one of the things that hits a lot of people, and I can definitely raise my hand and say, I got to slap my hand and scold myself a lot, is the lifestyle creep, right? If you've ever heard of lifestyle creep or lifestyle reach, where as you make more, you spend more because you can do that and you can buy more and get more and do more because it's there. But you're really not buying yourself freedom like the way you want to, right? When you could say, okay, well, if all of our bills are 5 grand a month and I'm bringing in seven, we have $2,000 extra. But if all of a sudden now all your bills are seven and you're bringing in seven, now you're still kind of on the hamster wheel, right? So I think the delayed gratification, man, that's such a cool thing to point out because so many people I don't think have that. It's hard. And even for people who have
Mhm.
it, I don't think it's easy, right? That's not how you're probably naturally born and go to, is it? Or is that something that your parents like really drilled into you as a kid?
I yeah, I mean, I think I saw it. My dad with starting in a duplex, right? That's not glamorous, right? There's nothing sexy about that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, and then the next house that they bought and moved into was like a 70s fixer upper, and
Hmm.
he did a ton of work on it, created a ton of value there before they built their dream home, and I helped him build that, and that was a really cool experience. But
That's
no,
awesome.
I think I mean there was definitely great examples of that growing up, but you have to have the discipline, just like you said, right? Because I had friends of mine that were like, "Why are you driving a Volkswagen Jetta? What you could be driving at least a BMW or something cool, right?"
Hmm.
And it was like, well, because it's a depreciating asset, and this is enough car, and whatever. It didn't need it to boost my ego and stuff. So it was like little things that, you know, a car with a payment of $225 a month opened up that opportunity to be able to do more things faster,
Hmm.
and so one of the concepts that I read early on in a book, and I don't remember where I read it, read so many now, but velocity of money, right? So in other words, kind of making your money work harder for you, and keeping that snowball effect happening faster. And
Yeah.
so what I realized was two things. Number one, that small down payment owner occupier multifamily loan is just amazing. It's just an incredible launch pad because if you've got to put 25% down, it takes so much longer to save that down payment or to
Hmm.
come up with equity from another property. And so basically what I realized was I wanted to buy things that were more turnkey. So I didn't have to put a lot more cash in, because cash for down payments, for improvements, for whatever, is really the biggest limiter for most people to creating more passive wealth and passive income.
Hmm.
So the FHA start was great. And then I did a 15% down single family,
Okay.
and that is in a first, second tier suburb, Crystal, Minnesota.
Okay.
And so got a pretty good price, very cookie cutter home. And at the time, I'd converted my duplex into a sober home. So we help people that are
Nice.
recovering from addiction, and giving them a safe place to live, and a nicer place than a lot of these places out there.
Very
And
cool.
it's been a good, a really cool thing to kind of give back, and just hear the stories of people that are coming through. But
Hmm.
also it's been financially, successful as well. That was working out really well. So I bought the 15% down single family, and what
Again,
I
not
did was
20%, right? Because everyone thinks it's got to be 20
right,
or
right,
25. And you're like, no, there's options, even on a single
yep,
family to do 15. Probably paid
right,
some mortgage insurance on there, but it was still 5% less down than 20.
yep.
Yep.
Yeah, and so at the time when I was closing on that,
Hmm.
rates had jumped from about 3.5, 4% to 5.5, five point
Hmm.
seven five on and this is higher because when you don't live in it, the rates go up, right? It's about a half a point to a point if you don't live in it. So non-owner occupied,
Yeah.
always a higher
Correct.
interest rate.
Hmm.
So at the time, I was like, well, I'm not in love with this interest rate compared to where we had been. Right, we're in this just fairyland unicorn period of 3 to 4% interest rates. So
Yep.
there was one non-conforming bedroom in the basement. and a lot of living room space that was kind of just excessive and just unnecessary.
Mhm.
And to make this work for the model that we were doing, I needed more bedrooms. So I built a large bedroom in the basement, and then I had two egress windows installed. So I created a legal bedroom out of a non-conforming bedroom, and
Mm.
I added another bedroom that was pretty huge. So by doing
Nice.
so, in just 1 year, I added 35 grand of value, and I
Wow.
only spent about 12 grand on the project. And then I refied into a 3.75 and dropped PMI. So I got out of PMI, dropped my rate. Between the two of those, I cash flowed another $300 a month. And
Nice.
I was now in a better interest rate locked for the 30 years. And, just all things better. Right. So I had to spend a little bit of money on that, but the 12
Yep.
grand was still less than what that forced depreciation that I created. And it was super, super specific. Right. So I didn't do a roof. I didn't need to do a roof, but I didn't do a furnace. I didn't do things I didn't have to do.
Yeah.
So adding those bedrooms created almost immediate value. And so the
Absolutely.
market the market was going up too. So there was definitely some luck there and some timing, and it wasn't just super genius stuff, but I kind of knew where the market was going.
Hmm.
And it all played out really well. And so then the next year, bought another one, a huge single family, did the same thing. With that one, it was 20% down. I want to say, yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think that one was 20% down because that one was totally ready to go. Didn't need it, already had a ton of bedrooms, so it's kind of just ready to go. And I didn't really want to risk not having the value there down the
Hmm.
road.
Hmm.
So did that one kind of the standard way,
Yeah.
just to, again to avoid that PMI like you talked about. Great cash flow, but then COVID hit, and a lot of things changed in the market. So that one we ended up actually selling because the neighborhood changed quite a bit, and the property manager had a lot of challenges keeping tenants in there. And so sold that, and then that was actually at the same time it kind of worked out. We sold our other single family home to build our current home. So, but going back, the duplex that I bought in 2013, one of the things I didn't realize was I was super focused on the cash flow, right?
Yeah.
Well, in that time, the duplex that I bought for about 200 was now worth between 350 and 400.
Wow.
It gone up. It
Jeez.
gone up insanely, and I hardly put any money into it. And so
Yeah.
that's just
Spark
luck of
it.
the market, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You'd
that's
like to
not me
say it to
being
you, but that's well, you know
no.
what that is, though. Here's what it is. That's you being in the game, though. That's
Yeah.
you being in the game, right?
Yep.
That's not you being on the sideline having analysis paralysis. You freaking jumped in and did it, and you
Yep.
get you get to ride the wave when you're in the water. You can't ride the wave if you're on the beach.
Yep.
I just made that up
And
right
and
now. I think
that's
that's pretty good,
I
right?
like
Makes sense,
I like that.
right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. In 2013, it was buyer's market, right? And
Yeah.
and there
Hmm.
wasn't a ton of buyer's confidence, right? There was a ton of inventory,
Hmm.
and there were tons of foreclosures, and
Hmm.
the market was extremely different. People were buying, but not with the ferocious excitement we've seen for the last 3, 4, 5 years now. So that's
Hmm.
been interesting because I think, like you said, just getting in that game, then I was able to ride the wave.
Hmm.
So that was really neat. So then what happened was I looked into options to do a HELOC. And when
Okay.
you don't live in a property, they don't let you do a home equity line of credit, but you can do what's called a business line of credit, which just means you work with a commercial bank, local community bank, and you get a line of credit. It works the same. It's a floating interest rate, so it moves up and down with the market, but you
Hmm.
can tap, it's up to 70/30. And so I was able to get
So
about
70% of what it's
100.
worth.
Right. So I owed about 180, but now it was worth, close to 380. So you
Hmm.
do, 70% of that 380 or whatever they were willing to give me in terms of the perceived value at the time. So
Yep.
I was able to get about $100,000 line of credit. So that
That's
that was
huge.
actually where we took the 20% for the second single family that we bought.
Ah, okay.
So basically, kind of back again to velocity of money, we
Hmm.
basically bought that single family with 100% leverage,
Yeah.
because the 20% came from equity from our duplex, and the cash flow was significant. The cash flow was probably like 1,200 a month, so it was a no brainer because the payment was maybe 150 to 200 bucks. So we could use the cash flow to pay off the HELOC, the business line of credit, and basically buy it with no money out of pocket, and use the cash flow to pay off the debt, pay off the down payment. But that way, our first duplex was buying our now third property. So
That's awesome.
starting to move the needle faster, right? And so that's kind of at the point which I started to realize that appreciation is how most of us make most of our money in real estate. And along the way, we need to have cash flow. I mean, I think that's important, but at the same time, I think it's a very underappreciated part of real estate, because if you think about it, our average price in our market right now is just under 400,000. So at an average of, close to 4% over the last, whatever, 80 years has been the appreciation, completely averaged. And obviously each year is a little different, higher or
Hmm.
lower, but 4% of 400 grand is 16 grand a year. I don't know of any properties that are going to cash flow that much. So you look back, and even though I cash flowed well in the duplex that we bought with, basically nothing down, the real benefit was almost more so in that appreciation, because then I was able to take that equity and go buy more, and kind of move the needle faster. Because if I had to keep coming up with 50 to 100 grand down each time, right? I mean, that
Well,
takes a while.
from your day job, right? From
Yeah,
from earned income, and that's after tax dollars income, right? So that's one thing you hear, like people like Robert Kiyosaki and others talk about a lot. But really, when you think about it, for you to have $100,000 savings that you could put down on a property, you had to make almost 200, or maybe 170 to 180, 180 grand just to make that 100, right? Because it's after tax dollars. So that's a ton of money, right? The other thing I think, as people don't think about a lot is, and it's just an amazing, powerful thing, is these are like plants. Properties are like plants. So you have your plant. You didn't chop down your tree and then say, "Oh, we got our trees are gone." You're using like the seeds from it. It's your plant. So you still have your tree that's still spitting out money, but now you have more trees because of that, right? Because you're taking the seeds from it. Whereas a lot of people who, especially if you don't understand the difference between being rich and being wealthy, right? Wealth is that, kind of just system and that power where you don't lose it. You're not sacrificing one thing to get the next. So you still had the properties. You didn't have to sell it to get rid of this. A couple of them you did, but most you did not, right? Which
right.
is how
Yeah,
I've got a lot of the places that I've got, is that snowball effect with it keeps on printing out money, and then it goes up in value, and then you just kind of rinse and repeat. But you got to get it in the
yep.
first place to start there.
Yeah, and I also, one of the things that I realized was, because we were continuing to be in this really low interest market, it
Hmm.
made more sense to put more leverage into buildings, right? So because
Hmm.
because the interest payments, not only are the interest, it's a write-off, right? So you're getting tax benefits, and that's another thing I think people overlook.
Totally.
Huge write-offs,
Yeah.
especially being a real estate agent. I'm a real estate professional, so I have a lot of extra write-offs and things that can go against my earned income, and that's probably a whole nother podcast. But
Yeah. We should actually do one on
it,
that. Yeah.
but
That's
but
most
the
agents don't even get that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so the tax advantages, the appreciation, there's four ways you make money in real estate, right? It's tax write-offs, it's cash flow, it's appreciation, and of course the debt pay down, but the tenants are paying the debt down for you. So,
Mhm.
it's such a neat model. So with low interest rates, it makes a ton of sense to go in with much heavier leverage, because of the really low amount of interest payments still allows for cash flow, right? So there's still cash flow opportunity even when you're coming in with more higher debt ratio. And so that was kind of the big learning there. And so then I did something that a lot of people are afraid to do. I pulled a HELOC, a smaller one, out on my single family, my personal house, that we were living in at the time, and used that to invest in our first larger apartment building. So we found a 35 unit apartment building in South Minneapolis, and basically decided to do something that I'd been interested in doing for a couple of years, but hadn't either had the courage or knowledge or something.
Yeah.
And did a syndication. So was a really
Ah.
cool experience where, yeah, you put in some of your own money, and but then as there's general partners and limited partners are people that just invest their money, right? It's truly passive, which is
Mhm.
another cool thing, because I had investors that didn't really want to manage stores. They wanted to invest in real estate, but they didn't want the managing the property manager or managing
Mhm.
tenant, placement and all that, which can be, occasionally, at times, a bit of a task, especially with a bigger building. That's a pretty big task. So,
Right.
that was a really neat experience. And so just finished a second syndication that we did on a 49 unit portfolio in Tennessee, and
Sweet.
that's been going super well. So that was this year. Last year was 35 unit, and that's kind
Wow.
of that exciting point where the hockey stick really started to go. And
So the
so
hockey stick. Explain the hockey stick.
so, I mean, reality is, I bought a duplex, right? And,
Yeah.
you're kind of just cruising along, and for the moment, for 3-4 years, not other than a $500 to $700 a month, net gain on paying less, and having a little bit lower cost of living.
Hmm.
There's you don't feel a lot of that. It's like I always say that the duck on the water, right? If you look at the duck on the top, it's just, it's calm, it's just cruising. But under
Yeah.
the water, those legs are, they're going 100 miles an hour.
I like
and
it. I like it.
so, you're kind of watching the duck, and the duck's just looking like he's just kind of puttering along across the lake.
Yeah.
And but then at that point, when the values started to creep up, you're able to go get lines of credit, on these houses that have appreciated, these rental properties, take those to buy more. It's a bit of a gamble, right? I mean, there's definitely some risk there.
Hmm.
But I always left a fair share of equity, and you have to anyway, in all these properties. So if the sky fell, and everything's on fire, I could still sell, and clean clean those lines of credit up, and have some money to take care of business, and pay bills. But really been an exciting way. So, not all of it's been financed with, leverage from equity, but it really sped up the process for us to kind of do that.
Hmm.
And then the other part was taking on partners, and doing something bigger, where, I felt like I was experienced enough and ready enough, and had enough experience with various different properties, property management, operations. And that's a whole nother level,
Oh yeah.
when you have more than just one door, and all of a sudden you've got a handful of buildings, and contractors, and all these different things. And so was feeling confident enough and experienced enough, like, what, I think I can do this. And so then I jumped into the commercial world, and that's really been fun, because commercial is so cool, because you can truly create forced appreciation. So one of the things that I started to kind of learn about was
Hmm.
value add properties. And in commercial real estate, especially the bigger stuff, 20, 30 doors and up,
Yeah.
the banks look at it as the income approach, right?
Hmm.
So versus the comparable sale approach. So if you buy a house, you got to wait for the neighbors' houses to go up in value to create equity and to create appreciation, right? That's really what it's kind of just that rising tide effect, right?
Hmm.
Well, in commercial, if you create another, you know, 20 grand a year in income, you actually multiply that by your cap rate. And so you might have created hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of value just by increasing the income. And that can be done in a year. And when you're trying to refinance a house a year later, I mean, it was a little bit lucky that I was able to squeeze enough juice out of the second property that I was talking about, where I added those two bedrooms, because
Hmm.
it might not have appraised. It was only about a year and a month, I think, after I'd bought it. And I think I got a favorable appraisal, which is great. I
Hmm.
met with her, and made sure she was extremely aware of all the things I
Good
did.
move.
I think that's important too. I think the personal touch, and some of those, not just crossing your fingers, trying to help, that process along, to give yourself the best shot. But yeah, but then realizing that in commercial, if you do things right,
Hmm.
you can create, you know, crazy amounts of wealth, and also help other people and bring them along. And that's really one of my passions, has been helping other people do what I've done, because there's nothing super spectacular about, or amazing or hard about doing an FHA duplex, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's a reasonably small amount down for, anybody looking to buy real estate, and
Hmm.
a great way to get started. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, dude. It's a lot of it. Well, and it's funny. what you did with adding the value, adding the egress window into making it another legal bedroom that you could count, which then increases your room count, right? Which increases the value because it's a 4 bed versus a three, or a three versus a two. That was a specific, intelligent thing you did. But then you couple that with the fact you got a little lucky with the market, right? Like
Right.
you didn't control that, good or bad, right? Of course, people always want to say, look at me when the market's hot, and don't look at me when it's bad, right? Like you
Yeah.
can't control it either way, but you can control the actions you took. And and that was a smart move, which I'm sure you probably read from someone else doing that, or heard from someone else saying, hey, you should do this, right? Just learning
Yeah.
those things, which is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and it's like little stuff. So it's finished square footage right in the basement of that property, but to add an egress window is 2 grand. And typically you're going to get on a property of this size, it was only like $260,000 purchase price. So not a big expensive property. You're usually going to get at least 10 grand for a legal bedroom.
Hmm.
So if you put 2 grand in to get 10 grand out, that's a no brainer, right? And
Yeah.
so I spent 12 grand to get about 35 or 40 grand or whatever it was of forced appreciation.
Hmm.
But I did it pretty strategically, right? Because I knew what the value of a bedroom was, and more
Yeah.
bedrooms is usually a higher value, right? Even
Yeah.
though it's already finished square footage. So I think definitely some expense there, definitely some investment. But if you're making moves with that mentality, like how can I put this in so it's going to have a multiplier effect?
Hmm.
It's exciting. So
Dude, I
for
love
sure.
it. So yeah, so one thing, if you're listening to this and you're taking some mental notes or some physical notes, I'm sure you're seeing, because I'm seeing a cool pattern here, is with you and your wife, and you being able to talk your wife into this, which that in itself should be a podcast episode, right? Like that's tricky to get both partners on the same page sometimes, and that delayed gratification, right? Like, let's go live with other people and share a yard when we could go get a house, but that's tough. That's tricky. But you got in the game. You didn't sit on the sidelines forever. Everyone does for a little bit, right? But you didn't sit on the sidelines forever. You got in the game, and you really tried to leverage the assets you had by getting more and doing it as intelligently as you can. So buying with, as we want to put as little money into the properties as you can to purchase them, right? And have your money working faster for you, which you totally did. And then found creative ways to go get financing that I'd guarantee you, if you just asked the normal Joe Schmo off the street, wouldn't think you could even do. Right. So it's having a good team of
Yep.
people that know what they're doing, that can say, oh no, you can do a single family with only 15% down instead of 20. And you can do a duplex or a fourplex with 3.5% down. What? No, no, no. My aunt at Christmas says it's 20% down. Well, your aunt at Christmas doesn't know anything about real estate, right? So make sure we
Yep.
listen to the right people, who are telling you the things because they're in the business, so they're doing it. They've done what you've done, right? Which is huge. So now at this point, you have how many doors total?
Uh, just 87 or so, I think it is. So something like
87
that.
doors. And really, that's probably in what, 7 years? Is that about right? Eight? Is that right?
2013, it's 9 years, I guess. Yeah. Yep.
Nine. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yep.
With
Yep.
with two that you were kind of with the one or two properties, right? So I mean, if you got to start the clock to, nine, but it's a really almost 7 or 8 of production.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's the hockey stick that I was talking about, right? So
it's
like
true. It's true.
three years ago, I had like 4 doors. Now it's almost 90. So
Wow.
and that's a little bit deceiving. There's partners and stuff.
Yeah.
That sounds cooler than it is realistically, but it, it's neat because if we can do a good job there, everybody wins too. So you're bringing other people along, you're helping other people build wealth, which is really one of my passions, right? I mean, I'm doing it for myself, but it's really fun to like you said, kind of have that tribe of people. Some of them are giving you advice, and some of them you're helping to come along and teach them about some of the ropes and depreciation. Some of the write-offs with these big buildings, you can do special tax studies called cost segregation studies and have huge write-offs. 40, 50, $60,000 write-offs, and that's huge because, like you said too, trying to save up money to be able to afford more properties. Well, a big part of that is not paying more than you have to in taxes, and just
Absolutely.
finding those legal and strategic ways to keep your hard-earned money, because it's a hustle, every day. And as a self-employed person, it's nothing's ever guaranteed. So that's really the ultimate goal, is just to buy back time and be
Yeah.
able to have more time with less hours worked, so I can go have more fun with my family. That's basically it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, like you said too, you kind of hit on earlier, which I think is really cool. Just talking about again, not making your lifestyle like, okay, now we're gonna go get the huge McMansion, and then we're gonna get the jet, and then and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having big, huge, hairy, audacious goals, right? But why do you do what you do, right? I had this conversation the other day, and it's always important. Why are you doing what are you doing, and what's true to yourself, right? The point of this is time, right? When you're young, things are about stuff. But when you're older, whatever older is, right, in your life, but when you're older, it's about memories, it's about moments. And I think it's about time, and real estate and cash flow provide that to you. And the more of it you have, then the more moments you can have, and the time with the people you want to be with. That's important, right? So I know that's why you and I hustle and do what we do so much, and so we're so driven on it, right? It's those opportunities, which is fun.
Yeah,
It's amazing. So
100%. It's all about the peak life experiences, right? I mean, I think
yeah,
that's, more than the stuff. I think we all like nice stuff, but the memories that you create along the way, it's part of the journey. And it's fun. And now it's I think when you're young, you're just hustling to make money, and eventually at a certain point you're more focused on the time that you're spending, what you're doing with it. So it's been definitely an evolution for me to keep a balance, right? Because sometimes you can be working all the time and just trying to find that path. And real estate's just been a super fun journey for me. So pretty excited to see where things go from here, for sure. So
yeah, man. Well, I know that you've helped a lot of people get in the game. You've helped a lot of people get their first multi-unit property, or their first property, their first investment. And you're doing some pretty cool things these days, and we're doing some awesome collaborations, helping people get in the game, and buy 4 properties in 1 year instead of just 2, or buy
mhm.
3 instead of just 1, or maybe possibly 2, right? And there's some things where, again, you really gotta listen to the people that are doing what you want to do and have done it, not telling you the rules they think that they know that aren't necessarily accurate, right? So
Yeah.
so that's huge. So where can people find you, Ryan, if they want to reach out to you, learn more, connect with you?
You can go to my website, which is bluedoormn.com, or
Okay.
you can email me at hello@bluedoormn.com as well. Reach out. I'm happy to share any insight or answer questions, or if you're interested in, kind of doing something similar, or getting started, or taking an already, good foundation to the next level. Love to help in any way I can. It's a lot of fun, and I'm here as a resource. So I'd love to do that. So, and also, with the slow flip stuff that we've been doing recently, I'm just super pumped, because for most of my investors that I've helped over the years, it's always that battle to create more cash, or either put less down, and have more cash flow. Just coming up with the down payment, I guess, is always the limiting factor for most people, because you have to save up so much money. and
Mhm.
uh and so that's been super exciting. So I'm really excited to see where that goes, and keep growing things.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Yeah, it's super exciting when you realize that you don't have to have that 20 to 25% down, and there's ways to get into a property. And yeah, it's super fun that we get to help people see that and do that and put a plan together and get to that kind of freedom number a lot quicker than what they would think they'd have to do the normal way, right? So
Yeah.
definitely, guys and gals, hit up Ryan for any questions, any advice on that. He knows everything there is about multi-units and leverage, and a very sharp cat. With that, guys, we will see you on the next episode of the Creative Cash Flow Show. Thank you for being here. Ryan, thanks for joining me today, bud. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll be talking here very soon about some opportunities we have in the works right now.